Hello, and thanks for joining us, Jeanette. I really appreciate you coming on today. This video is being recorded for the Drive to Thrive, which is a small division of what we're doing at CAN PKU right now, which is the Canadian PKU and Allied Disorders, to support those who have left the PKU treatment guidelines, either because they were a child in this between 65 and 85, and the doctor recommended that they be discharged, or because some places didn't have coverage and they couldn't afford to stay on, so they went off, or just because they thought they could. They didn't want to be on it anymore. But we now know science is showing us that adults need to be on care as well. So that's what these videos are being made for. So I really appreciate you coming on, Jeanette, and telling us your story. I'm going to pass it off to you. I'm going to change the view here so that
Okay.
they can see your lovely face when you're doing the talking.
Okay.
And just give us your story.
Yes. I'm Jeanette Rankin. I live in Ontario, Canada, and I was born with PKU. I was born May 1967, and then at that time, they started testing all the babies in October of 66. So when I was born, they automatically test all the babies, and they discovered I was PKU. I have three brothers and one sister, so they tested the rest of the family and found out my sister, which is 2.5 years older than myself, also had PKU. So at that time, we're one of the first ones in Canada that was discovered as PKU. So I was in the hospital for 6 weeks to regulate, my system, to monitor my blood, making sure that I'm on the right formula at that time. And at that time, my mom, she was, taking care of my sister that was 2.5 and trying to, regulate her diet, her formula, and that. So it was quite challenging, with mom trying to raise us two that were PKU plus three other boys. So once I was that, I went back home. Instead of drinking regular milk, I drank the PKU formula out of a bottle. I was, I actually drank a bottle till I was 5 years old, because at that time there was no flavors. There was no, vanilla, strawberry, any flavors like that. It was just it. I had to drink the milk because out of the bottle, because the smell was not very nice. Um, and then at that time, like, we would go to London Hospital, to the Children's Hospital, to get our bloods tested, monitored through a doctor. And then at that time, when we were, when the doctors figured that your brain was developed by the age 5. So they said, oh, you're 5 years old. You don't have to be on the diet anymore. You don't have to measure your food or drink the formula. You can eat just like anybody else. So that was great. I thought it was wonderful. I can eat meat. I can eat what I want. So my sister and I both did that. And, we went through grade school. I didn't miss any grades, average student. My sister was, she was pretty much average student, really excelled in spelling, but she did miss a grade just because she was like a little bit behind in the rest of the class. Then we were off the diet for that whole entire time. And then when it was time to, get ready to think of having children, you can't just say, oh, I'm pregnant. You have to plan. You have to make sure you go see the doctor, the PKU doctor. You have to get your blood levels down to where it's safe to carry a baby. And did you have a question?
I do have a quick question.
Okay.
Obviously, we know that the maternal diet is huge, but because you were discharged from care, I'm just wondering how you knew that you had to go back to care for pregnancy.
When we were, like, when I turned 5, the doctor said, hey, you can go eat what you want. Just remember, because you are female, you have to make sure that you go back on the diet, make sure your protein levels are safe to carry the baby.
It's
So
wonderful.
when you get ready to have the baby, come back and see us. So when I got married, I explained everything to my husband at that time, and it was pretty different. What do you mean you got to count your proteins, right? So I explain it a lot of the times to people that aren't aware of it. I explain it to them as, think of a diabetic. A diabetic has to watch their sugar intake. They have to make sure that stays level, that's safe for them. That's the same with a person with PKU. They have to count their protein intake to make sure that that is safe for that person. So just like diabetics, there's different levels, there's different degrees. PKU, there's different levels, there's different degrees, classic, mild, things like that. So when I got ready, my husband and I at that time, we went back to London and said, we want to have a baby, went back on the diet, counted everything that I ate, took the formula. Now, from the time I was 5, the diet was vegetables, right? Basically, vegetables and fruit. And from that time, and I was 26 when I planned to have my first son. And I was, at that time, at 26 years old, they actually had the low protein pasta. They had some low protein cookies, baking mixes. I remember making a special pizza dough for PKUs to have pizza, special cookie mixes there was a cookbook at the time, and we could actually go through those. And I went through that. I was baking all the time. It's like, but you still had to measure everything. And then because I was pregnant, I would have to take my blood every week and send it off to London. And as the pregnancy went on, I was able to add a little bit more protein as the time went on, depending later trimester. And then I went to,
that little bundle of yours is helping consume some of that protein.
oh yes, yes. He was born in 1994. He was 7 pounds 11 ounces, healthy boy. And the only thing that he has some ADHD in that, so that's the only difference than any other baby. He was healthy and normal.
And that can be contributed just down to being
anything.
Yeah, that's not necessarily related to anything that you did or didn't do during
exactly.
Yeah.
And the doctors was amazed at how well I stayed on that diet, because if something happened, and say for example I accidentally got pregnant and I was not on the diet and my protein levels were way high, not knowing what they would be, just the conception part, that of developing the baby, there'd be a lot of damage mentally, physically to that baby. And my sister and I knew that. Like, my sister was 3 years older than me, so I got to watch her when she got ready to have her kids. And so she had 2, and she went back on the diet and she counted everything, measured everything, did all the blood tests. She has 2 healthy, boy and a girl. And then I was planning on having a second one, like, within a year of each other, and say, hey, I want to stay on the diet between that first and the second child. But because we had to make sure my son had enough protein in his system to measure and test him properly. So he was, tested for PKU at birth. And then they said, we need to test him 8 days later just to make sure. So I had to go off the diet to get protein in his system to see if he's PKU, and he's not. So at that time, it's like, okay, well, we need you off the diet. I thought, okay, fine, I'll stay off the diet. And life happens, and I didn't have another child. So I was 26 and I definitely had postpartum, but that could be a number of whatever reasons. But I do know when I went off the diet, I I did have some, you're going from the diet to eating regular food. You're eating meat, you're eating pasta, you're eating whatever. And I went, my mom said when I was 5 years old and I went off the diet and my sister went off the diet, we cried for 3 days because our systems were so messed up. We were like, what do we do? We wasn't sure, right? But that's just going from low protein to getting, all that protein in your system.
And
So I
I'm
had a
not
little bit of that when I had my son.
Yeah, I'm
Go
just
ahead.
going to interject. I'm not a doctor. I can't say for certain, but the fact that your sister was 2.5 when she was diagnosed and able to have kids and do well in school tells me she was
Yeah,
likely a milder case of
she
PKU.
was. Yeah.
So
When
yeah,
I was born, I was classic PKU. My sister was mild. And then, so once I had my son, I went off the diet. He's 29 now, and I've been off the diet for about 27 years. And so everything was fine, everything was great. And I didn't notice any difference, but um I have had depression over the years, but there's also depression in my family. So I had been on Prozac, for many, many years. So anyway, fast forward to just, in 2020, my sister, she was 56, and, you get your postpartum, no, sorry, not postpartum, your menopause symptoms. So she was getting a little more foggy brained, and we thought, oh, it's just or I keep wanting to say postpartum, it's menopause. So we thought, oh, it's
okay.
menopause, right? So we thought, well, let's talk to your doctor, see what she was taking some menopause medication, but it doesn't seem to, she was starting to forget things like that. So we thought, hey, we need to maybe, have her go back to London, see what they say. They said, well, you let's try you back on the diet. She had been off the diet since she had her kids. So she went back on the diet, and like within a month, she was like feeling great. She was remembering things. She was feeling wonderful. And I thought, and she was like, you need to go back on the diet. And I said, nah, I'm gonna watch you. I don't know about that. I don't want to count food again. I don't want to, measure that lovely formula, because it is like back when even when I had my son, there was no flavors in the formula. And even though there was some low protein food that we could bake with, which we thought was great, but there was no flavor in that formula. And so what I did with the formula, I put it in a mixing cup, and I put cherry Kool-Aid with it, stir it up, drink it real fast because it still tasted awful. So, um, but I thought, nah, I'm gonna watch you. I was gonna watch my sister, see how she does with it. Well, my gracious, from me being 26, I'm 55 now, and from that time till now, the amount of options they have for formula is absolutely amazing. And so my sister would try out some of the different flavors of formula. She would try some, juice boxes. I call them juice boxes. They're the juice boxes for when you're going out and you're, not at home, makes it so much more convenient. And she said, here, try some. And I go, nah, it's okay. But I was kind of skeptical going back on it. So she was on it for about 6 months. And then, unfortunately, she passed away suddenly. She had an aneurysm. So it had nothing to do with PKU. It was just one of those things that happened.
Sorry.
Yeah. And so that was in 2020. And so we thought, well, she had an aneurysm. My brother had one. So we thought, you know what? We better get our whole family checked. So we all had MRIs. When I had my MRI, just to check for aneurysms, there was 2 little white spots in my brain. And so, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia back in 2014, which I know fibromyalgia is one of those things that is like nobody can see it, but you can certainly feel it. And a lot of that is, I call it like arthritis of the muscles, really. And it's very difficult to walk sometimes. So I thought, oh, it's fibromyalgia. But these two little white spots, the doctor said, well, that could be the sign of maybe the beginning of MS. And I goes, wait, what? No, 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 I don't want that. So I was talking to my mom and stuff, and she said, you know what, let's go talk to London and see what they say. Because my sister just passed away, and say, what's these white spots on the brain? So I went to London and talked to my PKU doctor and said, yeah, that's because your PKU is really high. So when they test, they say, let's take a test, see where it's at. And I was still skeptical on going back on that diet, but I took it and my levels were in the 2000s, 2,400 and something. And it's like, how are you like functioning?
I'm also just learning how to YouTube, and I am going to say that we have a video from one of the doctors in the States that's about white matter on the brain. So I'm just kind of learning how to be a YouTuber, but I will put that link in the description, is what all the people
Right.
say. So I'm going to put that link in so anyone can refer to that if they want more information on white spots in the brain.
Yes. And I thought, well, that was the beginning. I'm going, I don't want MS. It's like very debilitating. And then I thought, well, maybe it's got something to do with my fibromyalgia. But so I went back to London and they said my levels were 2,400 and something. And
I can't even imagine.
yeah, and I goes, what does that mean? Because back growing up, the numbers were like, it's a whole different system of numbers. Back growing up, it was 3.5 to whatever, and so a whole different system of learning numbers. It goes, what does that mean? It's like, you mean that you're like way, and it's like
Yeah,
out
because
of this range.
that's being compared to the treatment goal of 120 to 360. Is
Yeah.
That's just for those who are listening and don't understand or don't know PKU. That's what the numbers are. The 3.5 what it used to be is now 120 to 360. So 2000, I can't
So
even imagine.
yeah, so the say, okay, so like you compare it to a diabetic. A diabetic is between 4 and 7, which is the good range for a diabetic. So the good range or the safe range for PKU is between 120 and 360. So if your numbers are between 120 and 360, that means like you're good, you're healthy, you're right in range. And mine started off at 2,400 and something. And it's like, whoa. So they said, hey, let's try this. Cut back on your protein. Just try a couple samples. See what you think. Do that for a month. See where you're at in a month. So I did. And I thought, oh, this one's okay. But but the flavors, like I'm going, there was strawberry, there was orange, there's vanilla, there's the juice boxes had chocolate flavor. And it's like, well, okay, this isn't quite so bad. I kind of found which ones work for me. And I go, okay. And I didn't, because I was still eating protein, I was just cutting back my protein. I went from 2,400 down to 1,000 and something within a month. And then I said, okay, let's go. Yeah, let's do a little more. Let's go a little tighter and stuff. So they would start me off at 8 grams. Yeah, 8 grams of protein per day, the food that I eat. And then I thought, oh, okay, am I going to be eating nothing? That's what I was thinking. And but the doctors worked with me. They, and then I went down to 900 and something, 700. I was like, I almost bottomed out within 2 months. And my levels started, I said, okay, we need to up your protein. We need to go to 10. Wait a minute, we need to go to 11, 12. And as they were working and leveling me out, I didn't realize I had anxiety until I went back on the diet. And I goes, oh, I was so anxious about, see, I work full time. I've always worked full time as much as I could, growing up and whatever. And but I work full time, and I didn't realize I had so much anxiety or things that like the depression part and stuff like that. And I'm going, oh, okay. So
I know you mentioned earlier in the video that you had no signs between 26 and now.
yeah,
And it's fun to hear that when once you were back on diet, you're like, oh, but I
I
did.
didn't really.
And we hear a lot. So for anyone listening, that's like, I'm fine. I don't have any. Ask your family because your family will often say, oh,
Yes.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah. And see, this is what I was noticing is like I thought I was always, happy-go-lucky, positive type of person, which I've always have been. But I didn't realize that being off the diet was like, I didn't realize there was anxiety there that I didn't realize I had. And then going back on the diet, it's like my energy level was so down, but going back on the diet, I was going like, hey, I've got, let's do this, let's do this. Um, and that, so I was really expecting, I wasn't sure what to expect, but going back on the diet, I thought, I don't want to measure food, so, but I did. And as I realized that I'm going, wait a minute, this is making me feel better.
How was
I
it
was,
with your muscles? Were your muscles feeling better as well?
that was the other thing I didn't realize because of my fibromyalgia, your muscles and stuff, your muscles and stuff, they feel like ache and pains, or if you get walking too much, it's, you overdo it. But as I went back on the diet and got it regulated, I was noticing my fibromyalgia has eased up. Every time there was bad weather, fibromyalgia kicks in. Every time there was so the physical part of it, I was feeling better, healthier. And I was going like, okay, this isn't so bad. And then as I worked with the doctor and the dietitian, my levels now, I can have 20 grams of protein a day. And I take my formula. And for PKU, 20 grams of protein is it's hard to fathom.
It's like you won the lottery.
Yeah, exactly. And because the average PKU is what, between 8 and 10 grams of protein roughly. And that, so I've been able to eat 20 grams of protein a day. The formula alone is just like this, the selection you have to choose from is amazing. The flavors, plus the selection you have to choose from the PKU, the low protein foods, the mixes, they've got chicken patty mix. And I go, what? You got chicken patty mix? I go, so I tried that, and my dietitian gave me a sample, and I go, this is good.
We use it to make like a fake stuffing. It's
Yes,
got
it
that
tastes like
similar
stuffing.
stuffing flavor. So
Yes.
that's how we've used the chicken one. It's fine. You're right. There's a ton of options out there that we're not
There's
known
chicken
for.
patty mix, there's hamburger mix, there's hot dog mix, there's these little tweaks, which are little chicken nuggets, and the low protein pasta, the bread, there's low protein rice, and the selection is unreal. And that there alone makes it so much more enjoyable, because when you have family, um, you know, if I'm going to my family's place or something like that, I will say, hey, I need to bring over some rice, or I need to bring over my chicken patty mix, or make up something ahead of time. I'll make up a low protein pizza. And when they're having pizza, I'm having pizza too. And I'm going, this is cool. I can put on my toppings. And they never had the low protein shredded cheese. I'm going, they got shredded mozzarella cheese. I go, that's
And
crazy.
and it's also nice that in general, society is taking a different look at foods as well.
Yes.
Because we find there's a lot in the grocery store that we don't even have to look at low protein special.
Yeah.
Our son is very fortunate as well. He's at 30 grams with the help of Kuvan.
Yes.
So I feel exactly like the lottery, like you're saying. I sometimes feel almost bad telling families how much we can eat because it's not the same as some families. However, saying that. But yeah, we can go to a grocery store. We can order pizza from the local
Yes.
pizzeria who makes a
Yeah.
cauliflower base with the Dia or the Violite,
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, there's a lot of options. Um,
And yeah,
yeah, carry
go ahead.
on.
Well, the other thing too, reading the labels is key, absolutely key, because you have to see. Um, I would have some of those rice chips, and at one point they were, I forgot, 6 chips were one protein or something like that. Now they've changed it. 4 chips is one. So you got to read the labels because the labels can change. But I I'm sitting there going, if I knew that, you know, having at 26, having my son, and then, oh, you don't need to be on the diet, you're done having kids, whatever. But what I notice is now that I'm 55, I've already gone through menopause, but I didn't realize the positive, the anxiety part, feeling better, that and the energy that, to me, I'm going, if I knew that, I would have stayed on it after I had my son. And I'm thinking to myself, it's for anybody that's adult PKU, and I'm sitting there going, I was very skeptical when I was getting ready to go back on it. No, 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 I don't know about this. I don't know about this. I don't want to measure food. But the selections you have, it's, to me, it was definitely worth it. And if you are thinking about it, you're not sure about it, it give it a try. You're going to feel better, and it's going to make a big difference. Um,
Yeah, I'm sure
you
those
know,
doctors that released all these patients from care back in that 20-year period have the same thought you did. If they had
yeah,
known the difference, they would
yeah,
not have discharged these patients. So that's kind of key as to why we're trying to locate these people who think they're potentially cured of PKU,
yeah,
to let them know that coming back is vital
yeah,
for what they're doing, even if they don't realize it. Do you
yeah,
feel like, just remind me, you don't like Ontario, sorry, London's obviously Ontario, because every
yes,
province across Canada has different access to different foods. So I just want to
yes.
point that out because not everyone's going to have the same options Jeanette has, but there are options everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, did you feel supported by your clinic? I love that you took
Oh,
the
yes.
initiative to go back, but yeah, how was the support
Huge.
from your clinic?
Um, yeah, right from day one, that they said, "Oh yes, we like," they knew my sister, right? And um my dietitian kept calling me a superstar. It's because I would bring those levels down. I would make sure that they stayed within the right range. And they wanted to try to see how far I could go, see how high my protein intake could be. And they talked about try me on Kuvan. And I said, nah, no, no, like, to me, I feel pretty free to be able to have the 20 grams and stuff like that. I could see if you were maybe on the lower scale on 10 grams or something like that. But um and I just, like, my clinic was so supportive, and they're like, I talk to my dietitian once a month, and she says, hey, your levels are this. And it's like, um I am a heavier person, and I'm sitting there going, well, how can I watch the calories? So my dietitian would work with me, and she'd say, hey, well, let's try this instead of this. And so, very, very supportive. And I see them once a year now. I was 6 months at a time, but I see them once a year, and I take my blood work every 3 weeks to a month. And it's I'm really glad that I went back on it. And I'm, like you said, the ones that say, hey, you're 5 years old, you can be off the diet. It's like, I'm going, I wish we knew now what we back then, what we know now, because if that was the case, we would stay on the diet, you know, all the time. Because, you know, I was thinking to myself, if I wasn't on this diet, my mental capacity would be very difficult. The memory, you get that foggy brain day and you like, what did I have yesterday? What did I do? That foggy brainness is not just because you're having a bad day. Because I was starting to notice that foggy brain. And I'm going, I don't have that. I work in customer care. I'm working on computers all the time. So you're multitasking, you're talking to guests and customers, and you have to be sharp and on, on track. I was starting to have foggy brain before I was on the diet and didn't realize and how sharp I am now compared to when I was off the diet. So just that alone, it's like, it's amazing. To me, if I knew this, I would have went back on it sooner. And so I'm really glad I was on it.
Yeah,
So,
hindsight's 2020, and all we can
oh,
do is do
exactly.
better, right? We know
Yeah.
better to do better.
Yeah. And so I just say for any of the adults that, are PKU and they say, I'm fine, I'm fine. Well, I suggest, just talk to your clinic, talk to your doctors, see what they say. Just, you know, um, do a blood test and see where it's at. And because, you know, it's one thing if it's goes up a little bit 1 or 2 times, but when it's constantly way up there in the numbers, like I said, I didn't realize how much anxiety I had or how much foggy brain I had until I was back on the diet. So I'm really glad I'm on it.
Yeah. Can PKU we can't offer dietary advice. That has to come from
Yeah.
a clinician. And that's
Yeah.
and across the country we have a ton of dietitians, and I would say most, if not all of them, are wonderful. So, but we also try to offer support, like peer chat rooms, and to
Yes.
kind of speak to people and get the, chat with people and see this is me versus what I feel. And those services are available whether or not you're in clinic. So if you just
Yeah.
want to talk to someone, we have those available as well. But any dietary changes, any blood work, that has to go through a clinic, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where I like on the Can PKU, they have those adult cafes where you can talk to different adults with PKU and say, hey, this is what, this is what helps with me, and this is what helped. And you can always get information on, say, hey, well, let me try this, or, so different ideas on even way to cook things, recipes, all kinds of stuff. So I find that Can PKU website is awesome. It gives you so much information, those newsletters. Um, I actually I actually have an article in one of those newsletters. It says my PKU journey. And it goes basically what I just said is right from when I was born right up. And that my mom was absolutely amazing on how to juggle 2 of us being on PKU plus 3 boys. We were lucky enough
Kudos to her.
yeah, we were lucky enough. We grew up on a farm, so we had lots of vegetables, but I do remember growing up and they would have, roast beef or something on the table. And my brothers would be watching and it's like, you can't have that. Don't you touch that. And it's like, but it was, yeah, she's amazing. And kudos to her because I don't know how she did it with measuring my sister's food and my food and doing all the cooking for my boys, or my brothers. So um yeah, and I'm really glad I'm back on it. And so
Well, I really appreciate the time you're taking to speak to us today,
yeah, no problem.
and to make this video available on YouTube so that others can learn your story and see where their story might fit in. I really appreciate you taking that time today.
You're welcome. Thank you. Not a
Thank you.
problem. Thank you. You have a good day. You have a
Likewise.
great day.
You too,
Okay.
hon.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.